Welcome, everybody. This is our peer perspective series. This month, we will be talking about the parental mental health journey during the HIE diagnosis. I have 3 HIE parents here with me today who graciously volunteered their time to talk a little bit about their family and their journey when it comes to navigating mental health while having a child with HIE. As always, these are families' personal experiences. This is not medical advice. This is just their information and the choices that they chose to possibly help you look into possible options and to just hopefully make you feel a little bit better in the space you are at this time. So with that being said, if everybody wants to just take a minute and introduce yourself and your connection to Hope for HIE, I would greatly appreciate that.
Okay, great. I can go. So I'm Kat. I have 2 daughters, Aria and Riley. Riley's my HIE baby. She is about 2.5 years old. And so, I mean, she's had a very severe prognosis, and it hasn't turned out that way so much, but we are in a ton of therapies and, just kind of going through that process, the wait and see, all of that stuff.
Thank you, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
Ravi?
Yep. I'm Ravi. We have 2 sons. Our HIE kiddo is Kieran. He's about 5.5. We got introduced to HIE right at birth. During the diagnosis, moderate to severe was the diagnosis. Though his outcomes have been pretty mild, so we're very, very much appreciate all the work that HIE does, and wanting to continue and help out where we can.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep my kids' chaos to a minimum. Hi, my name is Kori, and I have 4 children. My youngest, Reese, was diagnosed HIE at birth in 2021. She will be 5 in August. She was diagnosed, I believe it's like a severe prognosis at birth. We were looking at what we thought was going to be kind of a blinded deaf baby situation. It was very scary. I don't think we got a lot of help with that, other than cooling was done really wonderfully. We connected with some really wonderful residents in that process, and thankfully she got a lot of wonderful therapies and is doing really, really well at 4 years old now. So I'm really grateful, and I'm just happy to be here and help talk about mental health where I can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, guys. I guess I'd like to just dive right in. Would you guys be able to talk a little bit about those initial moments? When did you recognize that you might need to seek out something more? Or what were the first steps that you looked into for therapy or additional assistance? Was it right away? Was it down the road? Who impacted those decisions?
I can go again. Maybe we'll just make a little rounds. So for me, so my daughter was born 10 weeks early. She had a couple of surgeries. So she actually got her HIE diagnosis after her second surgery. So she was about 8 weeks old at the time, and she, nearing full term at that point. And so we had already been in the hospital for probably like 75 days at that time. And so it had been actually, I think, like 1 or 2 weeks before that I had reached out to a therapist, like at the hospital, was talking to their social workers there, and they connecting me with someone, which was awesome. Is actually talked to me that same day. I totally needed it, and I didn't, basically because ironically, a lot of the things that we did end up, going into the realm of for HIE were also being, like we didn't know if my daughter was going to be G-tube dependent or even IV dependent forever because she had bowel issues. We didn't know about absorption or she would have like a short gut syndrome. Anyway, and also that would be impacting her cognitive and motor development. So, I kind of had those fears and like that was all coming at me. Of course, then she had her surgery, came out of surgery. Everything was so great. Like that her bowels had grown enough. They thought that none of these things would be true. So we received a lot of good news. And then, she started having seizures and then we had MRIs and we found out that she was, she had had a pretty severe brain injury during the surgery. And then it was like, and now you're going to have all these things, which is like kind of funny in that, like, yay, this isn't going to happen. And then of course it was obviously not funny, but, so luckily I did have some mental health, someone to reach out to. And I knew right away like that I needed to do that because it was just it was incredibly devastating on top of like weeks and weeks and weeks of having been like thinking we were coming out of the trauma and then like basically starting the trauma from scratch. So I reached out right away at that time and started.
Thanks, Kat. Ravi or Kori?
I was going to say, Ravi, do you want to go? If not, I can.
I was trying to unmute. Sorry.
I
was like, pressed the wrong button. So I apologize. So I think for me, one of the things that, that really kind of made it clear that like, supporting mental health is going to be an important part of this journey is when at the initial like diagnosis, right after birth, going up to the NICU right away and, speaking with the attending who happened to be a neonatal neurologist, like a specialty. And so she was going through all the things about possible outcomes with the HIE diagnosis. And it just like in that moment, it felt like I felt so incredibly alone. And, my wife wasn't with me yet. She was still downstairs. She was still like getting after birth care and everything. And it's a whole, another part of her story and everything. And it was during that time that like, just felt this kind of loneliness and like, how are we going to cope and how are we going to get through this? And, when we came later that evening back up to the NICU, there was a care package from Hope for HIE, and in that care package had all of this information, all this documentation, and from there it was very clear that we are not alone, and that there are others that have gone through this, and there's this whole organization that supports and helps give parents the voice and the information to advocate for themselves, and that's where it was very clear. Is like, we should seek out help for this. And I've seen the benefit of therapy. I've seen my wife go through therapy, and, I'm just forthcoming and honest that I haven't pursued therapy yet personally for myself. As I've been going through this trauma and this journey, it has always been like, waiting and seeing, right? And looking at the next step and then the next step. And I think I've been so consumed by that I haven't found that opportunity to do something for myself. And I know I need to, and I recognize that like my wife has done that and I've supported her in that. And I see the growth that she's gotten. So it's like, I see all the benefits. I haven't taken that step, and I'm trying to figure out what my blocker is. And I don't know. And so a different side of the therapy, the mental health journey, I guess.
Yeah. And Ravi, and I appreciate your honesty because not every mental health journey is going to lead you to a therapist. There are many different options when it comes to supports. It's just recognizing what you need. Mm-hmm. The other piece I wanted to indicate was I really appreciate you being here. And you started to mention, with your wife being back, in L&D and you being in the NICU. I find sometimes fathers minimize the impact that all of this has on them because you're stuck with making a lot of decisions in the time where you're being thrown a lot of new information in the NICU, and you're simultaneously, can I assume, worrying about what's happening to your wife, to the mother of your
very much
child,
so.
beyond where. Are you able to speak a little bit to that point? Because I think it's just so important for dads to kind of hear that if you have any information.
So this is I'll go a little bit into the story and then to kind of like what had happened during that time, and I think it might help in that regard just to kind of frame what I went through and what like helped me kind of go through that a little bit. And I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know if I went through it the right way, but as I was up in the NICU and speaking with the attending, another nurse came up and actually informed me that my wife had gone into emergency surgery. She had hemorrhaged during post-birth care and recovery, and she'd lost a ton of blood. Blood pressure was dropping, so she was rushed to emergency surgery. And it was in that moment that I asked where the nearest restroom was because I got sick, right? Like I was getting to a point where like I didn't know the outcomes or what was going to happen with my son. Now I didn't know what was going to happen with my wife. Am I going to be leaving this hospital alone? Was the first thought in my mind. And I was, after I came back to the NICU in the room, the attending was like, there's really nothing, there's no decisions for you to make. I've given you all the information. I will give you more information. I will come down after your wife is back from surgery, and we'll give all the information together at that time. There's no more decisions to make. We have him. We'll take care of him. We'll get the cooling mat was starting to be brought out, and all of those all of the equipment. And I went back to the delivery room, right? And she wasn't there yet. So I was like sitting in a room by myself, and it's just like waiting there. And it was one of those things. It was just like, it was a lot of self-reflection of like I felt I was like out of body, but then also like, how am I going to make it through this? Like what does the other side look like? As I don't know, right? And I didn't know at that time. And it was just really, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Jen. It's just like it's kind of hard in that regard, because I think that's something where, and you're right about, therapy is not the sole journey for mental health. And one of the things that I found is like helping me is writing about it. So I've written I've written some Facebook posts. I've written a lot of things down, and that's been helping me kind of work through a lot of that trauma and that pain.
Wonderful. I love that you found something that works for you. That's great. Kori, how about you? When did you first recognize that something more might be going on, and where you reached out for help?
I always forget like the trauma of the words wait and see, and the fact that I like blocked them out of my brain over the last couple of years until Ravi said them, and then I was like, oh, that's yep. So what the thing was, you have to wait and see with HIE. And I think what we did with my daughter was I was waiting and seeing, and I was really just so anxious and so desperate to, is the other shoe going to drop? Is something worse going to come along? Is a developmental issue going to arise? Is she going to be able to walk? Is she going to be able to talk? Are we going to end up on a feeding tube? Things like that I neglected myself for nearly a year. And it was probably not until she had, had her 24-hour, 36-hour something stay, for seizure checks and for infantile spasms and things like that, where I laid in the bed with her the whole time and had her hooked up to a monitor and a camera and all the things. And they sent me out of there, and they said, please don't come back. Please don't, she's doing okay. Like, I know it's so hard and you're so scared and you're so stressed, but she's doing okay. And the way that multiple nurses kind of looked at me, I thought, oh, maybe it's me. like I was really worried, but and they took me seriously. They kept her for, you know, the 24-hour plus stay. It was a valid reason for her to be there. But if multiple people are giving me that look, maybe it's me. And so that is when I sought out a therapist. I went on an antidepressant. Both of those were really, really helpful for me. I did about 6 months of EMDR therapy to kind of process her birth, which put me in ICU, and it put her in the NICU. And what for me personally, it was about a year. It took about a year to even think about addressing my mental health. For my husband, 3+ years. So like, yeah, it's a long time because you're waiting and seeing for another person. So I almost didn't even have time to address the me issue.
Mm-hmm.
Kori, would you maybe talk a little bit more? You started talking about some of the different things that you tried. You said the medication, the EMDR, and talk therapy. Can you talk a little bit about what those were and how that was for you? What each one kind of did for your mental health and your well-being.
Absolutely. So originally, I didn't really know where to start mental health wise, and I think I told you initially before we started the recording in our last call that nobody really checked on me per se. You know, I went to my OBGYN and they gave you the paper that asks you if you're doing okay. And in my experience, I've been told you should lie, because if you're honest, they might take you away. That's not true. Please, nobody think that I think that, but that's what some people think. And so in previous experiences, I didn't think I could be honest. And even when I was, we'd have a conversation, me and my OBGYN, and she didn't seem that worried about me. So I didn't seem that worried about me. And so I reached out to her in our, my chart portal, and I said, I don't know that it's depression. I don't know that it's anxiety, but I am angry all the time. I'm just angry. I don't know what's wrong with me or why I am so mad for just what feels like like I can't get rid of it. And so she suggested a fantastic EMDR therapist and also medication. And it took a couple years to find the right medication balance, and also to find the right therapist. Like EMDR did not work long term. It worked for 6 months until it felt kind of more like a chore. And I took a couple of years off of therapy. I'm now in regular talk therapy, and it's working really, really well for me. But I would say that, like we said with Ravi, therapy is not a one size fits all. It's not an immediate fixes your mental health situation. And for me, it has been like a really great like block in my Jenga tower, but there's so many other blocks, and I have to balance them all. Otherwise things lean and fall.
And then did you say that it took your husband 3 years?
I was talking to him about this before I came on here, because he asked what the call was about. And I said, we're talking about mental health, not even postpartum particularly, but mental health. Like when I decided to seek help after her birth. And he was like, oh, I mean, she was close to 4 years old before he felt like I was doing well enough that he could process how her birth affected him. I gave birth alone during COVID. Like I had COVID during the height of the pandemic panic. He dropped me off in the ER because our kids were at school, and he went home to get them off the bus, and they delivered me within an hour. So he missed the whole thing. And he called me and they said, hey, here's your baby on FaceTime. Your wife's in the ICU. We'll call you. Yeah, I had a really lovely OBGYN. She was super duper amazing, supportive through the process. But even when you have people that like think they're doing everything right and checking on you as much as they can, I hid that, and I stuffed it down, and I didn't make any time to take care of myself because I was so completely consumed with my child's health.
Wow. Kat, how about you? What about, you had mentioned that you had sought therapy out right away while your child was hospitalized. What did it look like after the hospitalization? Did you find a therapist in your community, or did you try anything else? Oops.
Oh, there we go. Actually, all of the therapy that I did was virtual. And so I had like a private therapist that I talked to. that whole time, while I was there. I will also say that I had some anxiety during my pregnancy and was prescribed antidepressants also, and then and that was just regular like kind of postpartum anxiety. I mean prenatal, perinatal. What do you call that? Prenatal anxiety. I don't know. And then ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks before she was born. And then I went I just started stacking meds, basically, to be totally honest with you. I mean, post coming back home, between therapy and really just all of the things we were dealing with, I feel like I just sort of lost my brain entirely. Stopped being able to think, stopped being able to reply to listen to people. People were getting mad at me. I forgot everything. All the time. I was so overstimulated. So I ended up adding another medication. Honestly, it's been a real management just to have a body and a brain that is functioning. And I attribute that to having 2 children, but also and just sort of, having a full-time job and being really busy. But I mean, it was unlike anything that I had really experienced before. So I do feel like it was also is pretty much just an ongoing trauma response. So therapy was very helpful. I don't think I really experienced what some people did in terms of occasionally I did, I would say. I felt a little bit of dissociation, but I didn't need, I didn't feel like it was I needed to process it all as much. And I think I had the benefit of that being I was 7 weeks out of having a baby, 8 weeks out from that when we truly got the HIE diagnosis. It wasn't this whole traumatic event for us, right? It wasn't a birth. It wasn't I didn't get to hold my baby. All of those things were true, but they didn't all happen at once. So it doesn't feel like there's a moment. I found out 48 hours after she got HIE that she had HIE, in a very strange and confusing environment that then took 5 more days to find out what it really was. And then another 7 more days before they could really say no, this is real. So it was just sort of this slow drip. So I think my experience was very different than, moms or you, Ravi, who had to this is an onslaught of an experience. Mine was very much more of a slow drip. So I mean, again, that doesn't really answer your question there, but I think it's just a different experience.
No, but I appreciate it because everybody in the community has their own unique experience. Mm-hmm. But the trauma is real, regardless of if it happens at birth, if it happens shortly after, if it happens at an older age, and regardless of the outcomes, the trauma is there. You don't expect that for your child. And so...
and it's actually really interesting that you mentioned that, Kat, the slow drip. Is something that came up actually last night in a different support group for HIE. It's predominantly dads and non-birthing partners. And one of the things that was mentioned, or one of the things that I brought up, is that it's hard no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of what shape that hard looks like. Mm-hmm. The degree of difficulty isn't different. The trauma itself isn't different. How it looks, how long it takes, the shape of it, those mm-hmm. are the things that are different. But the trauma itself is no different. And the difficulty itself is no different.
Definitely. Yeah, I find that to be true for the outcome piece as well, right? Mm-hmm. This, not to take anything from anyone's experience, but the trauma in the experience of hearing the possibility is the moment, the moment of trauma. And so either whether I think the outcomes turn out better or worse, mm-hmm. we still, I feel experience that to the full extent in the time that it was happening,
Well, let's talk about other alternatives to therapy, because we had mentioned it's not just a one size fits mm-hmm. all. Mm-hmm. How about online communities? Who were your people during this time? Who did you turn to? Did you have anybody that it was really hard to turn them, and turn to them, and what were those reasons? And who was your people?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I love that you asked who was kind of hard to turn to, because it made me think of my mom immediately. My mom, who, like, you think you have a baby, you want your mom around to like help you out, but my mom is like looking at this beautiful, seemingly healthy, perfect baby and is like treating her like a normal baby. And I am so stressed to death that this is not a normal baby, and there's so many things wrong with this baby, and it's making me ill. And it felt like I couldn't say anything or do anything or bring anything to her. And it was a struggle. It really was. And it was hard to see. It's hard to see the positive when people are just, oh, why are you worried? The baby looks like it's doing, all the things that could be wrong though. And all the things that have gone wrong. You're living with all of your traumas that you've yet to deal with. And it's, for people that didn't live it, it feels almost impossible to explain. So yeah, there was a period of time where I felt like every conversation I had with my mom, she was elated about something my baby was doing, and I was like, shut up, there's probably something wrong. Love her, fantastic grandmother, and looking back, I needed that, but at the time, no, it was no help.
I'm hoping you had someone though that you could turn to.
Oh, I really bonded with actually my daughter's early intervention specialist, like a caseworker. She's fantastic. We're still friends to this day. I kind of keep her on speed dial and give her a little, what do you think about this? But I have found, honestly, that people, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, friends, who've even worked in healthcare are so much more, holy crap, that's crazy. And from the jump, understanding of, whoa, you guys both went through a crazy trauma, and it's normal that you would worry about all those things, versus she seems fine. Why are you the way you are?
For us, or at least for me, my main person was my wife. I feel like we did a really good job of checking in on each other, and like talking to each other about everything, making sure that we felt like there was no, like, in a world of uncertainties, that we didn't feel like there were, quote unquote, I know it's not the right word for it, but blind spots, so to speak, on, like, a lot of the wait and see and what we were thinking, what we're going through. And also, apart from my wife, one of my best friends who stood up at my wedding is actually a neonatal natologist at the hospital that we delivered at. And so, like, he knew the case and everything else. Like, obviously, like, after I told him, he didn't violate any HIPAA violations or anything like that. But it's, he became a really good partner. And interesting enough, one of our birth to three, our occupational therapist, we actually had a relationship with her prior to, we sat next to each other at UW Badger football games. And it just so happened that she was our occupational therapist that we got signed up with. And it's just like, it was like we were already like friends, and it just became like, it just deepened that relationship, and just, she became part of our family in that regard. So
Wonderful.
For me, I mean, the HIE group was like my mom. Well, I'll step back. My mom and family members are like very supportive. Like my best friend, actually a number of my friends, sort of like really, really, really like took a lot in terms of, helping to support us, and also just like understanding Riley. So that's been really great. But the HIE group is, I'm just saying this is like an advertisement because we're on an HIE thing, but like, I mean, I have connected with a number of, do happen to be moms, but that we have started like side messages on, sort of just like connecting and asking questions. And I mean, there are a couple of, there's at least one that I talk to like every single day now, and it's not just about our babies. Like, we are just really close friends. And ironically, she's in Canada, and I'm like, I like her son, who's her HIE baby, is like, I just like consider him, a kid that I love. And we're always there for each other, understanding like that part. Our outcomes are different, but we get like the experience. And I just like think it's funny all the time that some stranger like from the internet is like truthfully like a really close friend of mine now. And there's more than one mom like that I've been able to connect with. And I just feel like that has been a place where I've processed a lot of the like literally what's happened and what did the doctors say and like how did they let me down and or not. Our therapist and like do we look at stem cells, like every question that crosses your mind. And so that's been so invaluable, like so invaluable. And then as Riley's gotten older, like she does have a CVI diagnosis now, so then it's like finding those diagnoses that are really related to her. Like I've also connected with a little bit with like the CVI community and some of the groups on that. So that's nice too, because I think that's CVI, for example, I think is a diagnosis that is just so confusing. And like there is truly nobody that I can talk to about that gets it and isn't sort of trying to be like, but what do you mean? She can see, she can do this, she can that. And I have to like defend myself too. So it's been great to have some people that like truly understand it and can actually tell me like, you are not crazy. Because when it comes to the parental mental health piece, I would say that has been one of the absolute hardest things for me to deal with, is just like the feeling that I'm crazy. Like I've never said that to myself as much as I have in the last 2.5 years. Cause it's like, I do think that this is a valid concern about her, like this thing that she's doing or the vision thing or this or that. And people sort of have tendency to want to like look for the positive. Like, I mean, like you said, Kori, and so then I'm like questioning myself. Like, am I just somebody who can't accept how good and how lucky we have been that she's like doing so well? But there's a balance there, with like actually getting her the help that she needs and, not just being obsessed with it all the time. So that is like, that's the ongoing struggle every day. Every day is really like, do I pay attention to this or do I say like, this is okay, this isn't anything, this is normal childhood behavior, So that's where the groups like, I think come in a lot. It's kind of like fact checking ourselves from other parents who really get it,
I'd like to talk a little bit about more provider communication, whether that was early on in the NICU, PICU, when they're first having the conversation about your child having a diagnosis that you probably have never heard about and the potential outcomes that I think, Kori, you had mentioned, the wait and see. How did those conversations or even any subsequent conversations, Kat, you were just talking about it. Yeah. How does the provider communication play into more of your mental health? Did it set you up for better understanding? Did it complicate things more? What were your experiences?
Yeah, I'll just take my piece from here since I'm already on, but like, we really got the gamut, especially in the beginning. The first neurologist told us, this is pretty serious and she might have problems seeing, she might like have tightness, whatever. Then we went into like our actual formal meeting to go over it. And that was a great doctor who told, like, we asked very specific questions, like, what is the range of possibilities, Sarah? And they said she might have trouble reading in kindergarten, she might be quadriplegic. Like there's literally like the whole range. And then like because in our story we had like a second MRI because they just thought this didn't really make sense, just the way that it had gone down. And then that conversation was one of the worst conversations because they were like, no, this is as bad as we thought and worse, because now there's like a ton of scarring. Like this is settled in a way that it looks actually worse than the original MRI. And that doctor really just said like, the way I sum this up is that my husband asked the question, like, will our daughter ever be able to show us love? And this is like the hardest part of our story. And he just like stared at us. Like he didn't say yes. Like there's so many ways he could have handled the conversation. But he just kind of was like, usually kids find a way. You know, like that was pretty much the best answer that we could get at that time. So from that to like what has happened has been, you know, I really did feel like that was really, really hard for both of us to like, he didn't really give us a lot of leeway. And that was kind of like the last one we were left with, you know. I was very lucky that nurses like stopped us in the hallway and we're like, this isn't always this way. Like I can tell you stories, I can give you examples. Don't like decide that that's what's happening now. And then like a couple of months later, I had like wondered if she was having infantile spasms, and we got to have another EKG, I can never remember.
EKG, yeah.
Yeah, and the neurologist that we have there is actually, I think, on the board for HIE, like for this for HIE. And she gave us so much good news. She was like, this is really like what's under the hood, like in how things are working. And this is really like, you know, you should treat your kid like she's capable of everything, because at least we have some signs that like her brain is doing a lot better than we thought. And so she was really clear that the way that we had hope would impact the way that we parent and would, you know, impact her growth and development as in to her full potential. And so I think that was a big moment for us, like a really big moment for us to switch back into a world where we like had, you know, some agency and some variability to our outcomes. You know, so and then ongoing, like, I mean, our PT and our OTs are always, you know, very clear and like very hopeful. So and that's been really, really helpful from there. So yeah.
Thank you, Kat. Ravi, you want to go?
I'll go. Like I was saying before, you know, our attending in the NICU that, you know, at the time of diagnosis was like a neurospecialist, and so she went through kind of all like the possibilities of like, well, a moderate to severe HIE diagnosis could have a range of outcomes, you know, going from, you know, speaking about like, you know, feeding tube or cerebral palsy, you know, all the, like the full range. And one of the things that she kind of mentioned was that, like, you know, there's going to be a lot of machines in here at first, and you're going to have the cooling mat, you're going to have the EKG, you're going to have the IV, you know, you're going to have you know, all sorts of things that are, you know, the pulse oximeter, like everything is going to be in here. There's going to be a lot of things that could be beeping and everything. But over the next, you know, days, weeks, you know, however long, what we want to see, and like she did a good job laying out, like, here's our hope, so that we had something tangible to hold on to versus just this kind of like a world of unknowns. And she's like, as these machines do their job, they will start to go away. And when they start to go away, we will have answers from those particular machines. They won't just go away and they're just done. It's what is happening as a result. So cooling mat, and actually, like, during the cooling mat, like, you know, he wasn't, you know, he wasn't sedated. He was awake. And one of the moments that like he made eye contact with us, you know, like as he was on the cooling mat, and it just like, that was one of those things where it's like he, like, you know, you could see that he was looking at us, and just like, or at least that sort of felt like, and it was like, that was a moment of like, okay, he knows it's us, like he knows we're his parents. And you know, and kind of going back to the provider communication piece, but like that was where like what she said kind of laid the groundwork of our understanding, and that just helped us kind of go through all those next steps. We were in the NICU for, it's like 12 days, I believe, 12 or 13 days total. And it was to a point where it's like the IV went away. He was trying to feed. We were doing feeding tube, and then we went to, you know, then bottle feeding and stuff like that. My wife was pumping, and you know, it got to a point where it was like, and he was a big baby. He was 4 days late, so he was almost 10 pounds. So he's a big guy. And I remember one of the provider, like the one, like on the last or second to last day, And you're just like, okay, he's eating, the baby's eating, he's not lost a single ounce since birth. He's a big baby. Like, and NICU charts, like, they have to eat so many ounces based on their weight. And it's like, their charts don't normally go that high. So it's just like, we're like feeding him so much, and like basically forcing it down, with the feeding tube and everything. And he was taking bottle, but then he was getting full, right? But then he wasn't hitting those ounces. And it's like, well, he's not taking all of it. It's like, he's full. But then the doctor was just like looked at us. Is like, he hasn't lost an ounce. The last thing he's on is a little bit of supplemental oxygen. It was the lowest setting. He's like, do you feel comfortable taking oxygen home with you? And it's like yeah, like, and they're just like, he's like, get this family home. They don't need to be here anymore. If they're gonna keep the baby on oxygen at home, like, why are we doing this? Like, the baby will figure out how to eat. So it was just like, it was that progression of providers, like, really being there. And like, and they also heard us, like, again, with all that information that we got from the Hope for HIE like care package, like, we felt empowered to advocate for ourselves and for our child. And every single provider heard us. Like, we were there every morning. We were fortunate that the hospital was a 10-minute drive from our house, right? So we were able to go home every night, sleep in our own beds, get in every morning. And we were always there every single morning before rounds. And we were there for the update, the check-in, and we were able to ask all of our questions. We were never dismissed. It was very, like, the communication felt very mutual in that regard.
Wonderful.
I'm very jealous. I'm listening to your story and I'm just grinning because it feels like, had I had that in the NICU, like, oh my gosh, the way it would have changed our story. I told you guys I delivered during the height of COVID, but I like was without oxygen for a period during my delivery, and so was she, obviously. So she was whisked off to the NICU and I was whisked off to the ICU. And it was 5 days before I met her. So I refused to give her a name, and the NICU staff was unhappy with me because they were tired of calling her baby girl, and I haven't got to see this baby yet, so I'm not giving her a name. But in that time, my husband was at home taking care of our 3 kids, and I couldn't get up there to see her. So there really was nobody able to kind of communicate to us what was happening to her, other than like they'd call me and I'm kind of doped up and tell me, we're cooling her. I'm like, cool. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like a good idea if there's something wrong. Talk to my husband, and my husband is trying to Mr. Mom 3 children, and please go put a shirt on. And it was probably 3 months, I think, before we met with a neurologist in person, and I was able to ask all of my questions and really kind of get out there and have somebody tell me I wasn't crazy. Like Kat said, like, I felt crazy. It was 3 months of feeling like, wow, so much stuff happened and nobody talked to me about any of it. Who do I ask these questions to? And I'd asked her early intervention specialist and made friends with her caseworker, and they're lovely, but they work for the state. They don't know her medical case. They don't know how to answer the questions the neurologist can, and I can't go back to the NICU and ask. They'd sent me home with a baby and a diaper myself and said, good luck. So I admire that you had that support, and I really, really hope there's more parents out there that have it. And not that I'm even too sad about it, because it helped me become a really wonderful medical advocate for my daughter. But I do wish I had some of the information up front. I do. I wish that provider communication was a little bit clearer, I almost feel like sometimes providers are in such a rush, they don't realize that parents aren't quite there and they aren't quite getting it all. Because, wow, a trauma happened to you. And man, if like going back and reading my daughter's notes later was how I found out a lot of it. So of course, that's where you get the questions.
Thank you. Let's switch gears and talking about how things are going now over time. there was that initial trauma, but you've all have spent few years watching your child grow. You're on this HIE journey. And like we said earlier, every journey is different. How has your mental health journey changed? Have you needed ongoing therapy? Has it gotten easier? Has there been moments where it's gotten difficult again? What does that journey look like over the years that you've been managing through this?
I think that probably every HIE parent can kind of relate to this, but like, first of all, let's just say birthdays and like anniversaries of HIE are like such a, I guess, trigger time. Like, I mean, like for me, like driving I had to go visit my father-in-law in the hospital in like the winter, and which was also when Riley was in the hospital. And like driving to that hospital at that time, it like was like literally the exact same feelings that I would have then. Like I spent like, she was born on Christmas Eve. Like I have a lot of time when I'm not working around that period of time to think. So like I think it becomes like a very, very reflective time, a time when I felt like this last Christmas, I was just like journaling a lot, like this is where we are now. And this is what I want. Like, this is where we're at with our journey. And like, how do I want to be a part of this HIE community, like in the way that we are in it. And so I think ongoing, like for me personally, it's staying, like this is a thing that's changed our lives, like regardless of her outcome. It's changed the way they view the world. It changed the way that like I access the disability community, whether she's in the way that other people see it or not. And so, like I feel like it's like one of those things, you can't unknow what you know, and you can't unsee what you've seen. So like I want to be a part of it no matter what. And I think for my mental health, like it's the part of that journey has been figuring out how I can have that experience, like that deep of an experience, and be a part of the community, to keep, like it's a big part of my mental health to be able to access that and fit in a way that makes sense for other people too. So like things like that. I mean, just doing this, it's like, this is my mental health, like being a part of this community and being able to hear other people's stories is so important to me. And being able to spend time at certain times reflecting on those things. Like sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's so much joy of, of anything. I don't even, gratitude obviously for where we are, but even gratitude for the experience that we've had, because it's changed, like I said, the way that we look at the world. I think there's definitely grief there. There's definitely guilt there. There's like a little bit of like a survivor's guilt, I think, for the outcomes that we had. All of those things, all the time, every day, all at once, are all definitely all part of that experience for me still. And it's only been 2.5 years for me, but I don't imagine it's going to change really as time goes on. Like I think that all of those things will still happen.
So you're gonna say from like an ongoing perspective, like this community, the HIE community has been probably one of the biggest, like kind of, as it's starting to get even more involved, has been really, really great in terms of finding people that have gone through the journey, that understand, that know that there's not a need for a preamble anymore, right? Like to say like, oh, this is what we went with or anything. Everyone just knows, and it's unspoken and it's understood, and it's just we're all here for each other. And I think that's such a huge part of that, and that helps with that maybe that's part of why I haven't pursued therapy for myself yet. It's just I'm finding these other outlets, and and that's where, like, especially over time, I think, Kat, you kind of, you talk about this too, is like, as the outcomes are happening, you mentioned survivor's guilt. I mentioned this to Jen earlier this week, or at the end of last week, like this imposter syndrome that I feel. It's like, just the entire range of outcomes is just, it's a range. It's a huge range. And when outcomes become mild, it's like, well, do we really belong? And it goes back to what we talked about before, of like, the trauma is the initial trauma is what unites us. That is our shared experience. The outcomes are all different. It's the same thing with like the grief and the pain and the difficulty is all the same for everyone. The shape it takes is the only thing that's different. And that's what helps me understand and just kind of relate to this community, and allows me to survive it, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I kind of want to respond to you a little bit about that, because that imposter syndrome piece, like, I think, like you said, the trauma is real, and it's, like I said, it's such an interesting perspective to have when you are told that, like, any range of outcomes, that your child may be very sick, they may not be able to breathe on their own, they might be able to walk, talk, eat, etc. And at least for me, I feel like the only way that I can handle that the enormity of that, is to decide that that's okay, like that outcome would also be survivable. And so, like, I have to live that experience. Like, I have to say to myself, like, experience that. Like, I think the HIE group is, the online group is so wonderful for that exposure that you need early on, to know that there are parents who are at every single range and outcome, and they still have joy, and they still, like, there's still happiness. Like, it was so invaluable to me to see that. And so, I can only be like straight up honest. I didn't have really any connection to the disability, world before this happened. And it was very scary to me, like, as a person, like, if I were to come in contact with it. And so, to, like, sit myself in that experience and say, and come to the understanding, like, the true, like, deep understanding that this wouldn't just be a tragedy, that my child, like no matter where we ended up on that spectrum, like, there is value there to that life, and then to not experience it. Like, I think that there's something, like, I still feel like I stand with all these people that have every range of outcome, because now I'm like, well, I didn't know that before. And, like, everybody needs to know that, like, that's just such an important piece of information that I did not have before being put in this world. So, I guess that imposter syndrome is there, but, like, I do feel like I belong there. And so I still want to be there, I guess it's the best way to say it.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say to that is, like, the imposter syndrome is only internal, right? No one has ever made me feel like I didn't belong. Like, this has never been like anything external at all. It's only been in my own head. So and I know you're not suggesting that anyone has ever made me feel like I don't belong or anything like that. But, like, it's just like, that's where that, there is that. And that's kind of where I'm, like, I think that because of that imposter syndrome, I owe it to myself to get that support and therapy to, like, help me work through it, right? And so time will tell.
I would just like to say thank you for what you said too, because you're right. That initial trauma, that initial, like what I lived through, what my daughter lived through, and what we deal with, and why I'm here having this conversation with you all, and why you're here, and why Kat is here. That's what bonded us, and it's not regardless of our children's outcomes, none of those things are related to why we're here or how we belong to be here. And that was very helpful personally for me. I also have a child who's on the autism spectrum, and it does very well socially, considering, and it's very hard to exist. It feels sometimes in the disability community with a invisible disability, especially as a parent of multiple kids with multiple seemingly invisible disabilities. The imposter syndrome is very, very real. The guilt of like, well, we don't have it that bad is very, very real. The guilt of someone always has it worse, and we could be taking resources from them always runs through my head. And I really appreciate you saying that.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really just appreciate you guys just being vulnerable, sharing your stories and your journeys with our community. Because we put this on our YouTube page, and it's really nice to be able to point people to these when, they're struggling, and, every person is unique. And sometimes when they can hear it from families that are sitting where they are currently, those are those little pieces that help them feel maybe not so different and not so alone. And that, it's okay to be having these feelings, and it's okay to ask for help, regardless of what the help looks like. There's no shame in any of that, because what happened was real, and these feelings are real, and they're not going to magically go away, because, HIE is a journey. Your mental health is a journey. Things will ebb and flow. But with that being said, I guess, do you have, or what would be one key takeaway, or one thing you wish you would have known, or someone may have told you sooner or earlier on, for those parents just starting out, if you have something?
Personally, 4 years plus out, and something that I'm still working on in therapy right now, like I'll take my homework this week and I'll share it with you all, is that I've done this from the day my daughter was born, and especially in the medical advocacy community. And I now work here because something that I've brought into my life, and it's really been a wonderful, wonderful thing for me. But I would invite everyone to take on one less thing. I would invite every parent to just know that you can do something 80%, and that not every single thing has to be on you. You do not have to be the primary medical parent and also the person who cooks dinner 7 nights a week. You do not have to sign your child up for every single therapy. Out of 7 days a week, you could go 6. I invite you to do one thing a little bit less than you feel is necessary, than you feel you have to do, because you will burn yourself out.
Oh my gosh, Kori, can I just say thank you for saying that? It's so funny that you would say that, because I just literally today was like, maybe instead of getting up and go, like just hang around the house and do things that you want to do. And it was very related to this, because I was like, in those early moments, I feel like there's this weird feeling that I have about the early days of like my daughter's birth, and like, the NICU and HIE, which was like, at that time, there was an easy way to like look at everything around me and just say, you are not as important as this. And so like, I can do just this. And then as time goes on, you start thinking like, well, I have to go back to like doing everything. And in the moment, you're like, this is, I think I was talking to somebody else too. I'd gone through a massive trauma, which has nothing to do with HIE, but because I'm a realtor, and she's like writing an offer on like a vacation home. And she said, what I've been through, and like, still, I didn't let it change me enough to actually just like enjoy my life for what it is and what I have. And it's like exactly what I've been thinking about today. And like goes back to what you're saying, Kori, which is like, this will change you. Like HIE will change you in a way, and like, let it. change you. Like, let it remind you that life is fragile and valuable, and that like you deserve to enjoy your life, like no matter what it is exactly where my mind was at today anyway. So like your comments are a good reflection of that as well.
One of the things that I'd probably say is like a closing remark is like, it is very easy to feel alone along this journey, and along every step of the journey. And the thing to remember is that no one is alone in this journey. There's always someone that is either gone through it, or is with you, or is willing to listen, and is going to be there for you. No one is alone, and that's one of the things that like it was obvious to us when like we had people come out to support us and to help us, and it was, and it may feel, again, in depending on your situation, like everyone's different, but regardless, no one is alone in this.
Well, very good. Thank you guys all so very much. I do really appreciate everything that you shared, and just you and being part of this community. It's been amazing. Thank you. I really appreciate it.